Good evening everyone, and welcome to Monday Night Live. As per usual, I'll give it a couple of minutes and wait for Facebook to let everyone know that I'm live at the moment and you can tune in. And by all means, send me a comment or click the thumbs up button or something like that to let me know that you're here. And please invite anyone that you think might be interested in tonight's topic, which is herd dynamics and how our horses should behave when we're around. Hello Leah, how are you? So I'm going to give it a couple of minutes, as I said, for everyone to start joining, and we'll start chatting about this really interesting topic. I have to say thank you to Anna for nominating the topic. Hey Veronica, how you doing? I think it's a really important one, and it's one that can really affect how our horses... Hey Hillary, your goats are huge. I just saw your goat on Facebook, which is completely unrelated, but holy moly, they have just got massive. Hi Michael, hey Abby. Yeah, absolutely. It's really relevant, and it's something that can really come across to our experiences under saddle and how our horses are behaving under saddle. So it's something that I suppose I take it for granted, because as I always say at my clinics and things like that, horsemanship isn't a discipline. It's a lifestyle, it's a philosophy, it's an approach to our horses. So I really don't consider horsemanship as being something that you go and train and then you put it away, and then you just, act in a different way when you're around your horses in the herd. To me, horsemanship is the way that you are with your horses 24/7. So in the herd, in the float, in the stables, in the arena, in the competition, at the beach, wherever you go with your horses, horsemanship is a philosophy and approach, and a discipline is something that you train for. So when I started thinking about this topic and people started commenting, we've got a group for TKH peeps for people who have been to courses before. Hey Rachel, no worries. I hope you enjoy the replay. Hey Gwenda. And it's something that I hadn't really put much thought into. Hi Michelle. Hey Hannah, welcome. Hope you had a good weekend. And when I started looking at the comments that people were making, it really sort of hit home to me how we sometimes don't carry our philosophies into the herd, because we might feel like we're in the horse's environment and we've got, maybe we feel like we've got no right to interrupt them when they're talking to each other in their herd or something like that. So once I started thinking about it, I thought it was a really interesting topic, and one that is really going to have an impact to us, both the way that we're handling our horses and the way that they are behaving with us, both in the herd, at liberty, under saddle, all the rest of it. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about when it comes to herd dynamics is empowering ourselves with a little bit of knowledge. And most of us, I think that, especially those of us that are pretty blessed in having horses in our backyard or having horses quite close to us, we've probably spent time observing our horses. But I want to talk about it for those people that actually don't have a chance to observe their horses when their horses don't know that they're there. And I suppose even those of us that do have their horses nearby or in the backyard or something like that, I want us to be observing our horses with the purpose of gaining knowledge. And what I want to do with that knowledge, or the knowledge that I'm hoping to gain in regards to observing my horses, is not only who the alpha horse is or who the dominant horse is in the paddock, but where all the horses stand in the paddock, and probably how they interact with each other, and how much effort goes into one horse communicating with another horse. We've all seen those horses that, give a little flick of the ear, and the horse that they're talking to, can't get away quick enough. And then there's probably the horses that I call the ones that have more bark than they do bite, and I've got a couple of those in the paddock myself. I've got a few that'll follow through, but Squizzy is probably my prime example at feed time. She's got everyone bolting around in circles, and she makes up this big hullabaloo in regards to feed time, where she's, you know, going over the top, exceeding her, what I would consider to be a normal effort, in telling everyone that she's the boss and she's going to get fed first. Whereas our old horse, Al, he simply stands in his spot where he knows that his bucket is, and he just keeps everyone away from his spot with a flick of an ear or a glance of his head, and he really doesn't have to exert too much energy. So I guess what we're trying to observe in regards to our horses and what knowledge we're supposed to be gaining from that, or we're trying to gain from that, is how much effort each horse is using to communicate with another and how swiftly they are responding to that. Because what I want to try and do is understand which horses are responding rapidly, which horses might be going a little slower, how seriously they take it. So, you know, are they taking 2 steps to pacify the lead horse, or are they saying, yep, no worries, I'm way over here? Because that sort of information is going to give us some different ways that we can approach our horses. But what I wanted to talk about as well is if you've got horses in the paddock that are, you know, charging at each other and causing a kerfuffle when it comes to really small things like just moving through, you know, moving from one place to another, or getting grass or getting water. So I'm not talking about feed time. Feed time's a whole different thing, which we're going to talk about shortly. So, and human interaction is a whole different thing, which we're going to talk about as well. What I'm talking about is when the horses are on their own in the paddock and they don't know that you're there, so there's nothing for them to fight over, so to speak, and they're just interacting normally in the paddock. If you witness those horses and you feel like they're being over exuberant and they're going above board when it comes to communicating with each other, then the first thing we need to consider is, why are the horses going above board when it comes to communicating with each other when there's no stimulus in the paddock? So there's no feed, as in grain, that we've put in there. There's no hay bin thrown out or anything like that. It's just a normal interaction on a normal everyday. If you've got horses that are excessively communicating with each other, you know, they're charging instead of just walking, or they're really booting each other really significantly, or something like that, then what we need to consider is, do the horses have a external reason for I suppose a disjointed or a complicated paddock situation? So one of the contributing factors to that is going to be if the horses don't have enough space. So if you've got a few horses put into a reasonably small paddock where they don't have to cover a lot of ground, this could be a contributing factor to aggression towards each other. Because just like humans, hi Karen, hi Anna, thanks Anna for the topic. If you have horses that are sort of really, I'm not even going to say crammed, because I don't want you to think, oh, my horses are in 2 acres. They're definitely not crammed in there. But you know, 2 acres probably isn't that much space to move around in. And if they're, I'm going to put it in human terms, they're getting on each other's nerves. So if one horse can't get away, if they can't get their own space, this alone can create waves within the herd. This alone can create horses to get frustrated and to take it out onto the other horses and want to chase them around. Once upon a time, we introduced a new horse into a paddock with an older horse. Hey Mandy. And the older horse, as they do, chased the younger horse around the paddock, and we thought it was a reasonable size. It was probably 1.5 acres to 2 acres. And what happened was that the older horse that was chasing the younger horse was just relentless about it, and it got to the point where it was quite dangerous for both of them. I thought they were going to run into fences and you know, there was wounds happening, and I really thought that it was going to get to a stage where there was going to have no good outcome. And it was a simple case of not having enough space. If they had have been in a 10-acre paddock, the young horse would have been able to get far enough away from the older horse to satisfy him that the younger horse was giving him enough room and saying, yep, it's your paddock, I'm way over here, you don't need to worry about me. But what we caused by putting them in that paddock together was the younger horse couldn't get far enough away to satisfy the older horse, and that was just simple human error. We thought the paddock was big enough, we thought it was going to be no problem at all, but it turned out that it wasn't. So that's something to consider. You know, number one, do the horses have enough space when it comes to communicating with each other? Even our horses that have known each other for a long time, if we put them into a smaller paddock of an acre or 2 acres, you know, they'll start to grind on each other's nerves you know, after a little while, that's for sure. The second thing we need to consider is whether the horses are being overfed. When horses have a lot of grain on board, hey babe, how you doing? When horses have a lot of grain on board or a lot of sugars and things like that, it can definitely cause them to have a lot of excess energy, and when they're in a smaller paddock, they can't always get rid of that energy, or when they don't have a lot of traveling to do during the day, maybe they're in a paddock with an older horse that doesn't really cover much ground, then that can cause its own set of problems. Being that the horse that's overfed or the horse that's got excess energy on board, and you know, we sometimes think of overfeeding as you know, oh, a huge bucket of feed and all this oats and grains and things like that. If you're supplementing in any way, sometimes that can be enough sugar or proteins or whatever to just send your horse over the top of his energy tolerance level, and that's going to come out, or it can come out in a negative way if he's not being stimulated elsewhere, or if that energy is not being used in a positive way. Hey Leanne, how you doing? Thanks for joining. So definitely excess food is another thing to look at, because they will start sort of pushing the other horses around if they've got all this excess energy. The flip side of that coin is not enough work. So if your horses are even in a nice big paddock and you're not supplementing their feed, but they've got lots of grass and they've got lots of forage, I know my horses coming into winter are absolutely 100%, my herd is overweight at the moment, and they've been in a really nice paddock with lots of grass. I haven't been supplementing them whatsoever, but they're coming into winter really nice and fat. And when I say nice and fat, where, you know, we do get a lot of frost through winter. I'm not rugging them or anything like that, so I'm glad they've got that coverage, because it's going to help to keep them warm. But during the last few weeks in the lead up to winter, where the horses have had all this nice excess fat on them or nice excess weight on them, it certainly caused the herd to run around a lot more than it was before, and they're charging around, they're trying to use all that energy because I wasn't giving them the work to get that energy out of them. So too much food, the flip side of that is not enough work. If those horses feel like they've got, the end result is the same, which is too much energy. If those horses have too much energy, then they're going to start to look to burn that energy in other areas. They're going to get, you know, fiddly, and they're going to look for stimulus elsewhere. Yeah, and Melissa, absolutely. It is a good topic, and agistment centres is probably a really interesting place to observe the horses and the dynamics of what goes on. That's for sure. Hey, Julia, welcome. The fourth thing that I'm going to talk about, before we even talk about how the horses are interacting with us as humans, is a lack of stimulus. So I've got the perfect example at the moment. We've got a couple of horses in together. We've got a relatively young gelding. He's probably about 8 years old, and he is in with a 24-year-old horse. And they're in probably about a 2-acre paddock, and the older horse is being supplemented because he is old. Hey Sarah, he's being supplemented because he is old. The younger horse, hey Lisa, doesn't get very much food. He gets a lower amount of food, and both of the horses are ridden. But if we go a couple of days and those horses are not ridden, then that younger horse will absolutely try and get the older horse to play with him. And the older horse, who is Al, Al just says, no, I'm not interested. No, I'm not interested. No, I'm not interested. And, oh, hey, Ella. Hey, Nav, how you going? Al is big enough and ugly enough to look after himself, and he just says no, 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 no. But then Rocky, hey Brett, how you doing, will run around the paddock, and he'll buck and he'll rear and he'll kick and he'll do all sorts of things because he hasn't been able to release that energy in any other way. So he's tried to get Al to play with him, he's tried to get Al to play with him, he's tried to get Al to play with him. Al's not interested, and so Rocky goes and has to organise himself or look after himself. So typically Rocky is in a paddock with that's about 10 acres, and he's in with a 5-year-old, I'm going to say, and a 3-year-old, and they're all boys. The youngest one's a colt, and they play and they play and they play and they play. So they're using that excess energy, and again, they're not supplemented with their feeds at all. They're just in a really good grassy paddock, and their bodies are working really well, so they just constantly play with each other and get that release of energy out. So just to recap, those 4 things can really contribute to our horses displaying negative things. I'm not going to say that they're wrong, because horses are just doing what horses do, but the 4 main things that can cause issues, even without us being in the paddock, are a lack of space, too much food, not enough work, and a lack of stimulus, i.e. you've got an old horse in with a young horse. The young horse is meant to try and play and fight and all the rest of it, and the old horse is not interested. Or when you've got geldings and mares together, or a gelding and a mare, the mare's typically not very interested in playing, but the gelding wants to play. So we have to look at what horses do in nature, and what they're instinctually or physiologically designed to do. Boys play, and mares, you know, learn how to look after a young one and find out where the food is and find out where the water is. So they're probably a lot more even-tempered typically than a young male horse, even a young male horse that's been gelded. So moving on from once you've observed your herd and you have made a determination as to whether any of those factors are an issue, we want to start talking about when you are there. So when I approach my herd and I go out into the paddock, the first thing that I want is my herd to be respectful of my personal space. So you guys have probably seen, if you follow my Horsemanship page or you follow me on Instagram, you've probably seen me put up some videos. I'm glad you're enjoying it, Tracy. I'm sure that you've seen me put up some videos of my herd when I go out in the paddock and I call them up to check on them, and they just bolt towards me, and you'll see me filming, and there's a whole herd of horses just galloping towards me. But what you will notice is that those horses will stop galloping probably about 15 or 20 meters out, if not a little bit more, and then they slow down to a trot, and by the time they get to me, they're in a walk. They do not run all the way up to me, and it's not something that I would encourage. So a couple of my horses are liberty trained horses, particularly Cooper, and absolutely when I'm doing liberty training with him, he can canter right up to me and that's not a problem. But when he's in the paddock and he knows that I've just called him up for a feed, I certainly am not going to let my horses gallop or canter or rush right into my personal space. So that's rule number 1 that I would do with these horses is irrespective of how the herd's communicating with each other, rule number 1 is respect my personal space. The second determination we need to make is, are the horses being territorial over your attention? Are they fighting with each other over your attention, or are they fighting with each other over anticipated feed? Most of the time it's going to be over anticipated feed. You're going to hop in the paddock, you're going to have the feed buckets, you're going to line all the feed buckets up for the herd, and the herd's going to spread out and they're going to go to their feed. So typically when the horses start to get pushy and things like that, it's more than likely going to be about feed, Although sometimes when we're in the paddock, absolutely, they will all come up as a herd and want our attention. But typically it won't be as bolstery or as loud as it is when they smell food and they know that food's involved. So we need to make a decision as to whether it's about us or whether it's about feed. Irrespective, it really doesn't matter what it's about, because the solution is going to be the same. But I do want to make a mental note of that, whether the horses are worried about me or worried about feed, because I can sort of address it or train it in different ways, I guess. If you've got horses that are chasing other horses away, while you are there, you absolutely need to address that behavior. Once I enter the paddock, I consider myself to be the leader of that herd. So even if, you know, the lead horse comes up to me and then the lead horse starts chasing the other horses away, I will actually step in and say, no, not your responsibility right now. I want to talk to every single one of these horses, and so it's not your job to chase them away. You can chase them away out of your space when you're alone and you've got your own thing to do, but right now I want to talk to everybody. So even my boss horse or my alpha horse or my lead horse does not get to tell the other horses to leave me when I'm communicating with my horses. So if I need to, I will absolutely ask that the problem child, the horse that's bossing everybody else around, I will absolutely ask that horse to leave. So Michelle's saying, do you send your horses away before you give them their feed? Yes. So we're going to talk about how I would train horses in regards to their feed, but absolutely my ideal is that my horses will back up. I can put the food bucket on the ground, they will wait, and then when I leave that food bucket, then they're allowed to approach that feed bucket. Now, I know that sounds, you know, like a lot of effort, and absolutely training it can be a big effort, but it's worth it in the end. And even I am guilty of not always sticking to that stringent program, but I can say that it is absolutely, when I haven't done it for a while, the horses will build to a point where they do get bolstery and it does get dangerous, and I think to myself, this is because I haven't been doing the program. Whereas if I then ask them to all back up and get out of my space, they will sort of stand off and be respectful of that. Carolyn's saying, mostly because of feed, but other times the mare doesn't want to share you. Yeah, absolutely. So your mare might have to get told for a little while, hey, you need to go over there because I want to give this horse attention. You are allowed to stand in here if you like, but if you start telling this horse to leave, bypassing my authority, so to speak, then you get to go over there, because I don't want you telling other horses what to do when I'm around, because when I'm around, it's my decision. Now, my number one reason for this is my own safety. I cannot afford for an alpha horse to chase a younger horse and me potentially get knocked out of the way, because because that younger horse is saying, oh my God, I need to get out of the way, and I happen to be in the flight path, okay? So my horses all need to know that is absolutely unacceptable behavior to boss each other around when I'm present in the paddock. Awesome to see it as a YouTube video. Yeah, actually, I would love to do that, and hopefully I'll be able to pull that off for you guys. So that's my number one thing. My number one rule is, no, the other horses are not allowed to talk to the other horses or tell the other horses what to do while I'm in the paddock. That's my job. Once I leave, that's fine. They can do what they want. I obviously can't control the herd, but you need to consider those other 4 things that we talked about at the start, because if you've got issues in your herd, then one of those 4 things could be creating your issues. So that's something for you to think about if you want to try and fix your herd. If your herd is experiencing issues without you being there, then definitely you need to address, you know, lack of space, too much food, not enough work, or not enough stimulation. What about your more dominant horse is standing there, but the other one's too scared to come close while he is there? So again, I would still I would then ask for the more dominant horse to move away. I wouldn't necessarily chase the more dominant horse away, but I would probably try and yield the alpha horse. Say that I'm standing here and the horse is coming up, you guys are the horse. I would ask the alpha horse to stand over to my left and leave room for the more quiet or the lacking confidence horse to come up beside me. Now, what you could do to train that, if it was a real issue, if this horse really had a problem with it, is you could put your alpha horse online, and therefore you'd be able to really back that horse back up to the end of the lead and ask that horse to park and ask him to wait patiently while you went and did something with the other horse. And just encouraged him to bridge that gap or close that gap. The younger horse, or the horse that lacks confidence, should gain his confidence from you being there, knowing that the boss horse is not allowed to do anything to him while you're present. That's part of you being a leader, is you saying to your horses, I can protect you from all these other horses or predators or whatever. When we ride our horses down the beach, or we take them somewhere, or we take them on a trail, or we ride them at a competition, they are giving us their full trust, and they're saying to us, I trust you to look after me. It should be no different in the paddock, and this is where you can start to see how it will blend across into our riding time. So if you have a horse that lacks confidence with you under saddle, then maybe it'll be presented in the paddock. Maybe you'll find that the horse actually lacks confidence in the paddock and doesn't even trust you to look after him in the paddock, let alone take him out on the trail. So if you fix this issue in the paddock, then quite likely it's going to improve what's happening on the trail. Okay. So yes, you want to control the behavior while they're there, and if you need to, you're going to go ahead and you're going to put them online, especially if you're worried about doing this at liberty. I know when we go in the paddock with our horses, most of the time they're free, and we don't have much time, and we might be putting buckets down or whatever we're doing. But what you can do is actually do this as a training session and put the horses online, or put the horse that you're particularly worried about online, so you can control what's happening with regards to that movement. The number one thing that I would do in regards to all of these issues is working with the horses at feed time. Feed time is the time when they're stimulated by something external, the feed. They're wanting to fight with each other and make sure that they get their feed, etc., etc. So feed time is going to be the most significant time that you can make a big impact, because obviously you can withhold the feed until the horses are patiently waiting. Now, you need to do this one at a time first. So for example, I've got a herd of 5 horses, and what I would do to train this is I would teach each of those horses individually to wait for their feed, to back up and wait for their feed until I gave them a cue, or until I walked away from the bucket. If you've got a herd situation, you would actually teach them to wait for a cue, because ultimately what you'd like to do is put all the buckets down and have all the horses waiting, and then give them the cue that they're allowed to eat. Now, that just sounds like a phenomenal thing. I know that a few of you are probably sitting there just going, no way, that's just not going to happen. And what I always smile about is the fact that we will 100% believe that we can teach a dog to do that, but for some reason we don't think that we can teach a horse, and yet a dog is about 1/3 of our body weight or less than our body weight. I mean, I've got 2 dogs that are 10% of my body weight. My horses are 10 times my body weight, and yet I'll teach my dogs to sit down and wait before they take their food, but I won't teach my 600-kilo horse to wait, and he's the one that's going to do so much more damage. So it does take time, but it absolutely 100% can get done. My 4-year-old gelding mouths me and occasionally will test to see if he can use his teeth. Has never bitten me, but I do move him away as soon as he looks like he wants to test the boundary. Do you think this is dominance or just play? Without seeing it, I can't really tell, but either they sort of intertwine, if you like. So geldings, colts will use their mouth for dominance, via play. So geldings learn, or colts learn, how to play fight so they can protect the herd when they become stallions and they have to fight off potential suitors that are trying to take their band of mares. So they will absolutely use their mouth to nip or play bite or things like that to tell the other horse, hey, I could have bitten you then, but I didn't. Hey, I could have done this. You'll see colts often pretend to rip out each other's tendons above the hocks. They'll try and take each other's knees out. They'll hold each other on the top of the wither. All of those techniques are control techniques, but once they become stallions, they will actually do that. In the wild, they'll actually rip out the tendons or something so they can't take their herd. So whilst they're playing, the purpose behind it is dominance. So absolutely you need to ask him to stay out of your space. And I like to teach my horses, or I like to offer my horses some other kind of stimulation, so they're still getting some fun and they're still getting some interaction, but I'm controlling the play. So I like to do a little bit of liberty and things like that with my horses, so they're still getting an outlet, but they're not being able to do the dominance drills. So there you go. Karen Kerno saying the 3 horses in our paddock all go to their own feed areas and wait patiently. Have to back up before they receive their feed. They're not happy but have learnt to do it with patience. Absolutely perfect. This is what's going to keep you safe, and that's a herd of 3 horses, so that's no easy feat, but Karen's been able to do it there. So okay, there's a few comments coming in and I'm missing them because they're going behind, so sorry if I missed you, but I will try and address it after the feed is finished, and I'll go ahead and type in type a reply if I didn't get to reply to you, because I know that I've just missed 2. All my 3 dogs wait for the cue. Didn't think twice to make the geldings do it. Yep. Yeah, exactly. So, it's something to really consider, and it's something that's going to be really powerful in regards to just our own interaction with our horses. Anna's saying you should feed each horse in the same place. Typically, yes. Even with my own horses who aren't lining up like Karen's do at the moment, all of my horses, because the alpha horse gets their feed, and then the 2IC, and then the 3IC, and then the 4IC, and then the 5th, they all get fed in the same order every single time. They tend to do that naturally, unless one of them, maybe the alpha's way down the back of the paddock, and then the younger horse will get fed first, and then by the time the alpha comes up, the 5th feed bowl's there. But 9 times out of 10, if the whole herd is there waiting, they generally will go into the same places, just because that's the order of hierarchy. So yes. So working with them at feed time is going to be the most effective and simple way to get your horses to learn how to wait patiently and respect your cues within the herd. So even when you don't have feed, they should be looking to you and listening to you in regards to what they should be doing. Feed them in order of dominance. Yes, typically that is exactly what's going to happen. I wouldn't deliberately chase off a dominant horse in regards to, I wouldn't be trying to force a dominant horse to wait until the end, because then, that dominant horse is just going to be, more wanting to push around the other horses because he didn't get. I have to respect the hierarchy in the paddock, just as I expect the horses to respect my hierarchy in the paddock. So every time I put that feed down, that feed is mine until I tell you that it's yours. So then we had a couple of questions. Oh no, I'll still work. I've got a couple more things in regards to working with the herd. So once you've started establishing each one being fed individually and teaching them that they have to wait patiently and things like that for their feed, then you can start to feed 2 horses at the same time and asking them to back up together and then get their feed, and then you can add the 3rd horse and the 4th horse and the 5th horse and so on and so forth. You need to train them one at a time. Individually, you need to have that control before you can expect to control the entire mob. So then what you'd start to do when you've got a little bit more time on the weekends is you or during the day if it so happens to be, you'd start to exercise those control techniques when you don't have any feed. So you might walk into the herd and you'll say to the herd, oh, you know, I just want to pat everyone today. So you'll go ahead and you'll get in the herd, make sure that they're giving you a nice respect boundary, but then you're going to say to each horse through body language, you're not actually going to say it out loud, you're going to indicate to each horse that each horse is going to get a pat, and each horse is not to tell the other horses to leave because they want your attention, or because they want their pat, or because they think that there's food involved. So for example, when my whole herd comes up, if Cooper starts to get a little bit bossy and he starts to say, well, I want your attention, or I want your feed, if he thinks that I've got feed, then I'll go ahead and say, well, Cooper, you don't get my attention. All 4 of these horses are going to get my attention until you can pull your head in and behave yourself, and then you'll get to stand with the whole 5. So I can stand there and all 5 of those horses will line up, and I can pat them all. There's one that's a little bit timid. Lux, she tends to hang at the back, but she will, as long as I make room for her amongst the horses, she will absolutely come up, and I can pat all 5 of them and have all of them around me, and I don't, and they're not pulling faces at each other or anything like that. And if they do, they get sent away. So they get sent away unemotionally. I don't chase them or get angry or anything like that. I simply back them out of the herd where we're all talking, and then I go from there. What about when they finish eating? Should we stand? Yeah, so that's going to happen. So as each horse finishes, they're going to want to try and steal the other one's feed if they're alphas. Now, it's up to you whether you've got the time to stand there. And when I have had the occasion to be in the paddock, maybe I've been, I don't know, still picking up buckets or whatever, and I notice that, oh, well, Cooper's finished and now he's going to try and take her feed, I will absolutely protect Boogie's feed, for example, and say, no, you've had yours, you're finished. You can't control that when you're not there, but if you are there, then I absolutely will say, no, you're not chasing her off her feed, and he can go ahead and stand back. So that's something that you can do if you're present. You don't have to go out of your way to do it particularly, but it's something that you can do if you're there. You can build the trust with the horse's feed that you're protecting, by showing that you will protect her from the alpha horse who's going to come and try and get the feed. Okay, so we've spoken about all of that, doing it one at a time, adding one at a time until you've built up to your entire herd. And sometimes, depending on your facility, sometimes it is going to be difficult to do this. It's ideal if you've got like a little yard that you can feed the herd on the outside of it, and then work with one at a time inside, and then start to add them and things like that. But without knowing your individual yard circumstances, there's not a lot of information I can give you in regards to that. So you can just try and work that out for yourself in terms of how you're gonna, get one separate, and then work. I would work with one horse for about a week, and then I'd work with the second horse for about a week individually, and so on and so forth. And then I'd start to, add the second horse, and add the third horse, and add the fourth horse. Yeah, so Cassandra's saying it does make it harder. Absolutely, it does make it harder. And if it's a real issue, I say, put up some yards and feed them separately. But I do not like feeding horses in yards where they can actually get into the yard. So I mean an enclosed yard with a gate, so when the alpha can't get in there. There's nothing worse than a horse being cornered in a yard. So absolutely make sure that you can separate them all into individual pens, and they're all left stuck in those pens or locked in those pens, and then when they're finished eating, you can go down and let them out one at a time or whatever, and then re-shut the yards. I don't leave gates in stables open or corrals or yards or anything like that, because I don't want those horses getting trapped in the yards, which can be quite dangerous. So then we start to talk about ponying horses. Anna had another question in regards to ponying a horse off her horse. Now, all of our horses are expected to pony and be ponied. So I want each one of my horses to be able to lead another horse off its back without biting it or kicking it or trying to chase it away. And I want to be able to lead another horse off my horse's back without the horse that's being led trying to bite it or chase it or anything like that. So this again comes down to my leadership. As far as I'm concerned, I'm the alpha in that herd. The horse that I'm the boss of the horse that I'm riding, and I'm the boss of the horse that I'm leading. So neither one of them has any business trying to interact with the other one. And this all starts when you see your horse pulling faces at another horse while you're present. So whether you go to competitions or whether you go to trail rides or whether you go to clinics, and I'll talk about clinics because that's where I see it the most, you will see horses walk into that paddock and another horse will line up and stand next to it, and that horse will put its ears back or bare its teeth or swish its tail or something like that, and the owner either doesn't see it or the owner doesn't address it. So that's the first phase of that horse saying, hey, my owner's not protecting me from this strange horse that's just arrived, so I'm going to go ahead and start to assert my dominance over it. As soon as that happens, that's only going to escalate from there. So at the start of the year, you might have a horse that simply puts its ears back and pulls a little face, and then by the end of the year, you've got a horse that's swinging its bum at other horses and trying to threaten it and kicking out at it and all that sort of stuff, because you didn't address it way back in January when he first pulled a face. So whenever my horse is pulling faces at another horse, I will absolutely address it and say, no, that is not, that's not acceptable behavior. So I will give them a job to do. I'll ask them to back up. I'll, make sure that I interrupt that, and I make sure that I interrupt that behavior and make it known to the horse that that was unacceptable behavior. Another thing that I need to clarify is that I do not let my horses smell other horses when they're with me. So even if Phil and I are standing next to each other and our two horses are next to each other that live in the same paddock together, and we're standing there at a course and we're side by side, if Cooper and George start to try and smell each other or play with each other or something like that, you will see Phil and I address that behavior. Because as far as we're concerned, as far as I'm concerned, it's my job to tell George to go away. And as far as Phil's concerned, it's his job to tell Cooper to go away. So it's Phil's job to protect him and George from Cooper and I, and it's my job to protect me and Cooper from George and Phil. It's not either of the horses' jobs to protect themselves or their owner. Okay, so I hope that's making sense. When you walk out into a paddock or are somewhere with your horse and you want to be considered their leader, it is your job to meet and greet the other horses. Okay, I never ever lead my horse into an arena and say, oh, all the strange horses, come on over and smell my horse. That's not his job. It's not his job to meet and greet all the other horses. It's my job to meet and greet all the other horses, because that's my arena, that's my area. So it's none of Cooper's business who's there and who's not there. We're just there to do a job. Okay, so I hope that makes sense in regards to how a simple change. I see a lot of people say, oh, my horse just wants to meet the other horses. No, he doesn't get to meet the other horses. He's not a dog. Okay, it's not about letting him socially interact, because what's going to happen as soon as you let your horse smell another horse, one of those horses is going to try and establish dominance over the other one. So it's going to be followed by a squeal or a strike or a bite or a kick or a grunt or a charge or something like that. A negative behavior is going to come out of letting two strange horses sniff each other. Obviously, once you put them back in the boxes and no one's around, they can do whatever they like, because once I've left them in the box, now they've got to look after themselves. But once I'm present, once I'm there, it's my job to look after what's going on. Anna's saying, will I growl at them? Not really. I don't use vocal reprimand or vocal cues or anything like that. Again, it's not typically something that horses consistently do. You know, mares obviously will squeal when someone's doing the wrong thing by them or something like that. But typically for horses, it's a physical cue system. So I just like to, you know, give him a bump or back him up or something like that to say, hey, no, you didn't need to do that. Or I'll ask him to step away from the other horse and say, well, if I can't trust you to be that close, where can I put you that you're going to be, that I can trust you, not to have to be, you know, busy yourself with what's going on with everybody else. So once I can start to establish those rules with my horse, no smelling other horses, no playing with other horses, whether I'm on the ground, whenever I'm present, my horse does not smell or smooch or do anything to another horse, then I have started to establish my, my role as the leader of us as a pair. And then my horse can start to make those connections. I speak a lot in these live feeds and at clinics and things like that about being consistent in our training. And what I find that our horses feel that we're the leader sometimes, and then, oh, you just let that horse bite me, or you just let me smell another horse, or you just let me do this, or I just took my feed off you, or you just put the feed down and walked away without, you know, establishing that it was yours. So I think that I took it off you. And so half the time the horse is going, oh, I'm the boss. You know, I chased the other horse away because I wanted your attention. So the horse is going, oh, well, I'm the boss at the moment. I'm the boss at the moment. I'm the boss at the moment. And then 10 minutes later or an hour later or the next day, we go and put a halter and a lead on them and we move their feet and we push them around and we advance on them and we don't let them take our real estate and we have our concrete shoes on and we, you know, we do all that stuff and the horse goes, oh, hang on a minute, you might be the leader here. Okay. And then we go ahead and we put them into the paddock and they chase every horse away from us and then they go, oh no, it's still me because you're here. And I'm calling the shots. So my horse has to know that consistently it's me calling the shots. This is, it's not a control freak issue. Okay, it's not about me being a control freak. It's about me consistently being the leader whenever I'm present with my horse. And it's these little things that are going to carry over to our under saddle work. If my horse can't trust me and see me as a leader on the ground, how's he going to trust me and see me as a leader on his back? Now, I don't like to use the word boss. I'm the horse's boss. I don't like using that, but it's something that seems to probably give us a picture in regards to how we're wanting the horses to interact and see us when we're with them. So leadership is what I'm trying to establish, and whenever I walk into that paddock, all of those horses need to go, oh, the leader is here, we're all going to be quiet and respectful, and then when she walks out the gate, then we can go ahead and discover our own hierarchy. It doesn't really matter. So I would fix all of this on the ground, and I would make sure that when it comes to ponying my horse off another horse or ponying another horse off my horse, I would make sure that I have clear-cut control when I'm on the ground with both of those horses before I would start to try and lead them off another horse. If you're an experienced person who leads horses off another horse, and I mean experienced in, you know, leading off both hands and asking the horse to move sideways and readjusting the horse forward and backwards and pushing them around, and your horse is able to push another horse around and he's going to follow your cues and all that sort of stuff, then you can go ahead and saddle your horse up and you can lead another horse around straight away if you know how to keep both you and your horse safe and the other horse safe. And if your horse is going to 100% listen to what it is that you've got to say. You know, when our horses were stallions, we expected to be able to lead horses off our stallions without our stallions carrying on, be it a mare or be it another gelding or be it another stallion, okay? Our horses had to go, okay, you're here, I've got a job to do, I'm going to pull my head in and my hormones aren't going to dictate that I'm going to attack this other horse just because I'm leading it, or I'm going to go ahead and push it or whatever without kicking it and things like that. So I can't stress that enough. If you're an inexperienced ponyer or you don't have a really good handle on your horse, get it done on the ground, have control over both of those horses, and then you can go ahead and saddle up the one that, you know, is the most trustworthy and the most going to listen to you the most, the horse that's going to respond to you the most, and then you can start to push and pony the other horse around, and then you can pony your horse off another horse. So as I said, they need to be able to be ponied, and they need to be able to pony all the way around. So I think I've pretty much covered everything. I know that I missed a couple of comments there, so I will absolutely address them in the replies. That'll either be this evening or tomorrow when I'm back in front of the comments. So I hope that everyone got something out of this live feed tonight. I thought it was a really interesting topic, and I will do an information sheet on it that'll just lay out the points that I've spoken about. Hopefully I've addressed everything that you guys have questions. I've got another one here. I absolutely tell other people not to let their horses smell my horse. Oh, look, in regards to them not getting offended, I think it's a respect thing. So as long as I don't jump down their throat, as long as I don't say, hey, you know, if I don't yell at someone, but if I just say, oh, I'm sorry, I don't let my horse smell other horses, and I generally say it that way, I don't let my horse smell other horses, because then I'm not telling them what to do with their horse, but obviously I am telling them what to do with their horse because they're bringing their horse over to smell my horse. So, and then if they want to know why or something like that, I will 100% explain it to them. I've got no problem with that. But yes, I will 100%. I do it all the time. I say to people, I'm sorry, I don't let my horse smell other horses. Can you not let your horse smell my horse? So, and I'll say it actually at the start of a clinic. You'll hear me, those of you that have been to courses before, you'll hear me say, oh, hey guys, don't let your horse smell other horses while you're at the clinic. And then I go into the explanation. Hey Michelle, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thanks everyone. Thank you so much for watching. I can see the thank yous starting to roll in. If you would like an information sheet, please contact me, send me a private message and I'll send the information sheet to you. It's basically just a PDF document that's just got the points that I've spoken about with a little explanation. It's pretty much everything that I've spoken about tonight, but it's probably laid out in a bit more succinct way, because obviously I love talking to you guys when you comment and things like that. So please share it, and follow Tanja Kraus Horsemanship on Facebook. So you know when all the live feeds are coming up and when we upload new YouTube videos, and we also send out a weekly newsletter. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have any topics that you would like me to address, please do so. Send them over to me and I'll see if I can get them on the list. Next week's Monday Night Live is going to be on transitions. So it's about when we have less than fantastic transitions, namely if our horse gets a little jumpy in upward transitions or a little divey in downward transitions. We're going to talk about some of the reasons that those transitions may not be so fantastic and some of the things that we can do to help those transitions be better. So if you would like an information sheet, please send me a private message to the inbox. I don't always get all the comments. Facebook filters the comments some way, so I'd hate to miss everyone. So go ahead and send your email address to my inbox. That's the quickest way for me to get the information sheet to you. Even if I send them to you all the time, just go ahead and put your email there, because then I can just copy and paste it and put it into mine. I hope you enjoyed tonight. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it, and it is fantastic to interact with you guys and talk horses on a Monday night. How could we spend our time any better? So thanks for joining me, and have a great week. Yes, Monique, via Facebook Messenger, that's fine. Or just go ahead to my Tanja Kraus Horsemanship page and you should be able to send me a message on there. There you go, Gwenda. Yeah, Gwenda's we've spoken a lot with Gwenda in regards to her horses, and she's used some of these techniques to help with a very, very bossy little pony, and she's been successful in that. Hooroo, Brett, I hope you're warm and dry. after your big mammoth effort. I hope you're not sitting out in your tractor still watching on your phone. I feel bad. I don't really feel, no, I do. Thank you so much for all your hard work. I can't wait to see you guys on the weekend. But I do hope that you're dry, and I hope everyone on the east coast of Australia is staying as dry as possible. Bye Ella, you're welcome. You're welcome, Monique. Because we have just had so much rain here already, and we're due for another couple hundred mils further up the northern New South Wales and southeast Queensland. So I hope you guys all stay dry, and go ahead and move your ponies if you need to get your horses up onto drier ground, because you northeast New South Wales and southeast Queensland, we are due to cop it a little bit harder over the next couple of days. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next week. Bye.